Hello, welcome to episode 95 of the Online Strength Coach podcast. Just a quick heads up before we get into the topic of today's show. Episode 96 will be recorded live on Facebook like I did with episode 94. Hopefully I can get a little bit more traction with it. That'll be on Friday the 17th of June and recording will be at 1 o'clock. That's 1300 hours British Standard Time or Greenwich Time. Okay, so today's topic comes from a conversation we had last night after the strength workshop. Me, Nick, and Ali went out for some food, McDonald's, and started talking shit. We read over one of the programs that Nick and Ali did in 2011, and I cried, threw up a little bit, laughing from reading it out aloud, the 17 rules that Ali put along with this program, and just looking back on how ridiculous the training methods that both of them were using only 5 years ago. But then later in the car, Ali asked me what would be a good podcast episode, or he asked this as a question. I thought it would be a good podcast episode. The crux of the question was, why is work ethic, or blind work ethic, or stupid work ethic, why does that almost always outdo people who think about what they're doing when it comes to lifting? So people who put thought into it, people who read about stuff, people who read either textbooks or read articles and try to apply principles to their training. Why is it that people who just kind of do something ridiculous program or do stupid things like try to add more weight every week, or try add more reps every week, push themselves to the limit, why does this person almost always progress better and faster than the person who thinks about it? So we're just going to go through that topic in today's episode. So this is more relevant to a beginner to intermediate level. When you start getting up towards an advanced or elite level without steroids, then we come into a different kind of scenario where we actually have to apply principles correctly. We have to start looking at our training in an intelligent way to stop yourself stalling. But you can get really far in strength sports without that being the case, especially powerlifting. So basically in the beginning, when you're starting, or you're 2 years in, or you're 4 years in, you're basically an adaptation sponge when it comes to strength training. You're starting from a clean slate normally. Quite often for people in strength sports, it's your first kind of foray into any reasonable, into any kind of reasonable training or sport background. They're normally people who weren't jocks in school that take up strength training later in their years, or fall into powerlifting later in the years. Or they can be people from like a rugby background or American football background who come into it. They normally come in at a better level though, because they've got a better training history. But you're basically an adaptation sponge. So anything you do will work, and normally the better it's applied, or the higher level of stress that's applied, the better the outcome is going to be. Someone who maybe overthinks things a little bit, and they're only been lifting for 1 or 2 years, they may start applying principles such as DUP, or they might start applying principles like Russian squat routine, or they start going off on routines and maybe don't get that overload stimulus week in, week out that they can adapt from. It could be quite possible for someone who isn't advanced, or someone who's in that novice to intermediate stage of lifting, they're undercooking themselves too much. They could be doing with more overload, more adaptation, because they can take it and they can adapt to it. So the person who's basically blindly doing as much as they can week in, week out, their trajectory is going to be much higher, or much faster, or much more of an upward curve for the first part of their training life than someone who's thinking about it and tries to apply like nuanced protocols, or even worse, comes up with their own training protocols and tries to apply it. you really, if you're writing programs or something, you really need an experiential base. I don't know, obviously people need to start somewhere, but looking back on it, I don't think it's really appropriate for someone with a smaller experiential base of working with someone or working with themselves. You probably shouldn't be doing routines for other people because you don't really know what you're doing. So the next thing is strength is a physiology or a limit activity. As such, like we discussed as I discussed in the overreach lecture, which I did on Monday. Basically, it's a strength training or powerlifting or weightlifting is a physiological limit sport. We take a physiological characteristic like max strength within 3 planes of motion with a certain implement and try, or in weightlifting, it's 2 planes of movement or 2 planes of motion with the same implement. We're trying to take 3 or 2 disciplines and max out our human potential in that area. As such, we run into the limits of physiology. So the limits of physiology within strength training are your ability to produce force quickly or to access the force that you've got through your neurology, and your physiology, so the mechanical properties that you have, your muscle cross-sectional area, your bone structure, your muscle attachments, your tendon attachments. All of these things basically determine what your limit is genetically at that point in time, or what your potential is at that point in time within a strength training context. To make us adapt, or for us to adapt and get stronger, we need to challenge that with a sufficient stressor week in, week out, to make sure that we're overloading, we're recovering, overloading, recovering. So we're basically doing what strength training is, which is, or what physical training is applying the appropriate stress at the appropriate time, allowing the time for recuperation for that stressor to take hold and for you to get stronger. Normally, this kind of goes back to what we were talking about before. Someone who thinks about things a little bit too much, or someone who hasn't got enough experience, or someone who is new to it, will probably not apply the correct amount of stress at the correct amount of time. Their tendency will normally be to under-apply stress, to allow too much time for recuperation. The sort of person that maybe does a 5-3-1 program and thinks that they need that week of detraining to come in and they do their sets of 5 up to 60%. You don't really need that because you recover so much faster. Your ability to push yourself as well is much reduced as someone who's used to applying like a high stress load on their bodies week in, week out. They can push themselves to a much further degree than someone who's used to just doing a program or pushing themselves to a lesser degree. To really get the a lot of the neurological adaptations that are going to make you stronger, there's the times you're going to have to want to puke. There's going to be times that you feel like your eyes are going to pop out. There's times you're going to feel like your joints are falling off, your muscles are sore, you're inflamed. There's a lot of times that training is going to suck, but that's what needs to happen for you to get stronger, because you need to unlock safety mechanisms. You need to turn off or turn down safety mechanisms within the body, and that's not an easy task. That's going to require a lot of stress. That's going to require a lot of effort. So the people who think about things tend to not want to apply that sort of effort because they think that maybe it's too much, or you're pushing it out too much. Whereas if you're going to be at one side of the coin in this argument, you're always better off being at the end of the coin someone who works too hard, because they will apply the stress and they will get stronger. So at the end of the day, we're trying to push physiological limits, and there's no real easy way of doing that. There is no easy way of doing that. There's no real intelligent way of doing that either. Even if a program's intelligent, there's still going to be times that you're going to be pushing yourself to as hard as you can. It's going to feel like shit. That's what you need to do. And we're talking about the personalities as well. What we'll get into now. The personality of someone who just wants to graft, who just wants to work hard, who wants to push themselves to the nth degree. These are the kind of people that will be successful at pretty much any sport they do, as long as there isn't... If there's a high skill component, then that's a different mindset. But when it comes to a physiological-based sport or a confrontational-based sport, like a contact sport, the person who just wants to graft and just get in people's faces and just fucking go for it, these kind of people are the people that are going to be successful within certain rules and within certain sports. Within powerlifting, these people are definitely successful. the sort of person who's like more of a strategic thinker, the person who likes to analyze things, the person who likes to look at the bigger picture, who maybe likes to look at what other people have done in the past, what's the research say, how could I best do this? Is this the optimal way of doing this? Is there another better way of doing this? Should I be using a belt now? Should I be using straps? I see this guy's using knee sleeves. Should I use that? What are knee sleeves? What are water knee sleeves made of? The sort of person that takes these mental rambles through time and space, they just end up overcomplicating things. At the end of the day, powerlifting is a fucking easy sport. It's a simple sport. There are 3 lifts done under certain conditions, under certain rules. To get better at that, you need to train those lifts regularly and push yourself at those lifts regularly. That's powerlifting, done, it's finished. If you apply those principles, you'll get better. You'll reach an advanced level. And then when you get advanced, then things get a little bit more nuanced. But the simplicity doesn't go away. It's just how you apply principles becomes a little bit more nuanced if it's done correctly. So basically, what I'm getting at here is the sort of person who just blindly pushes themselves. They will not think about things. They will not overthink things. They will just stick to the task, which is squat, bench, and deadlift. They will push themselves to a point where they'll get adaptation, and that's about the end of it. They won't really think about it too much outside of that. They might watch some videos, they might read some articles, they might delve into it a little bit, but when it comes down to actually training, they're not going to think about things. That's it. I would say that's kind of from my own experience. I was very interested when I started in programming. I read a lot, looked at a lot of things, but when it actually came to training, I'm just a Mongol at the end of the day. I just like training hard. I just like pushing myself. I like the feeling of my eyes popping out. I like the feeling of graft. I like to feel fucked after training. It's good. Gives me a good feeling afterwards. So that's what I seek when I train. I seek to push myself. So I had kind of a dualist kind of personality when it came to that stage. When it came to the programming and stuff, I was very interested in almost all detail behind it. When it came to lifting, I was just interested in the detail of it, interested in almost every aspect of that detail. But when it came to application, I just lifted. So the people that tend to be try to be intelligent, because you can't be intelligent without experience within lifting. They just overthink things, basically. And like we mentioned before, they tend to have a poor experiential base, so you can't really be... Lifting isn't... programming and lifting isn't something you can be good at without experience. It's not possible. You can't be a good coach without experience. You can be a good coach with... for example, if you were a basketball coach or a rugby coach or a football coach, if you're good at coaching people, good at coaching movements, and then you develop an understanding of lifting, theoretically maybe, then that person will become a good coach much faster than someone who's maybe a novice lifter who starts coaching. The person who's a good coach first and then develops understanding of the activity will become a good coach much faster than someone who is inexperienced in both fields. They haven't coached a lot before and they haven't lifted a lot before. It takes a long time for people to be able to program for themselves or program for others, for people to be able to coach people, to be able to coach themselves even. If I was hiring a coach for a team or for whatever the context was, I want to understand that person's experiential base of training, whether it's just being a lifter, whether it's being an athlete, whether it's being a coach in another context outside of maybe strength and conditioning or strength coaching. I want to understand that first before I want to understand the theoretical knowledge. Because theoretical knowledge is like a 5%er in strength training. It's a 5%er in strength and conditioning. When you get to a level, it becomes incredibly important. It becomes incredibly useful. It basically gives you that X factor when it comes to programming. So when you get to a level, it's very important. But it takes a fucking long time to get to that level with people. The vast majority of people never get to anywhere near the level where an intelligently thought out, well put together program is going to make the world of difference between just training and pushing themselves hard. So people who understand the training process, when we say the training process, we understand where you're at relative to where you're going to go, what you need to hear at that stage, how you need to train at that stage. Example being, so within the strength training group, we've got different levels of lifters. We've got people who are maybe from an intermediate level, the upper end of the intermediate level, and people who are complete rank novices. So we keep getting the feedback from the lads who are coaching that the percentage-based program is not really working for these people who are weaker, so they're just prescribing loads. They can infer that because they are both experienced lifters. They have 10 years worth of training experience. They've reached an advanced level. They're novice coaching wise, but when it comes to coaching other lifters, they understand the process. So they're getting results by going off piece in the program because they understand that level of detail, that level of periodization is not necessarily applicable for that person. They are experientially rich, and that means they're effective in a coaching sense. So that's why I'd always want someone who was experienced over someone who was theoretically well-read or even intelligent. Intelligence can definitely be a burden within lifting. Another one of my notes here is stupid people don't question why things hurt. I think a lot of people probably don't understand how important this is within lifting. Again, like I said before, it's a physiological based response. It's a maximal stressor. You're trying to push the capacity within the human body to breaking point, or just before breaking point, and then let it remodel and become better. This means things are going to hurt. You're going to have sore elbows, you're going to have sore knees, you're going to have a sore back, you're going to have a sore chest, your joints are going to hurt, you're going to hurt, you're going to feel tired, you're going to feel shit, things aren't going to be great, you're going to have a stiff hip, you're going to have a stiff knee. If you're walking around not having stiff joints or stiff muscles, then you're probably not in a trained state. You're either peaking for a meet, or you're training shite, or your training is shite. Those are probably the two feelings you get. Like, there's a difference between being too sore and being in a trained state. That can be a fine line. But people who, maybe not, people who, I said stupid people, but people who don't think so much or aren't so cerebral with stuff, they tend to get on better because they just live their life and get on with it. Don't let the fact that they've got a sore knee bother them too much. And when it bothers someone like that, as a coach, I know there's a problem there and we need to address it. Whereas I have other athletes or players who are constantly whining about, oh, my wrist, oh, my shoulder, oh, my back. It's one thing after another. You know, with some people, they're just having a fucking whine and a moan. And they don't really, they're pretty shit trainers. And some people can get by on talent, it's fine. Whereas others, that's probably the reason why some people don't quite get to the next level. Within a sport like rugby, you get people who are good and they make it into the pro environment, but they never make it. They maybe get to like our A-team level maybe and never really get past that level. And a lot of it's mental. It's because they're in a contact sport where they do a lot of hard training and they're not quite at home with that. So they never really get past that next level. The people, in my experience anyway, the people who make it to the next level are the people who don't really question these things or just fucking get on with it, basically. So people who are cerebral tend to not just get on with it, which tends to be a big problem for them. And that kind of reaches into overthinkers. Also tend to be worriers. When something kind of goes wrong, so like, why is my shoulder sore? Let's go on Google and Google why my shoulder's sore. Oh, look, here's this guy called Mike Robertson or Eric Caressy. Let's go have a look at what they've got to say on the matter. Oh, I should be doing all of these different planes of motion with all these different bits of kit. Oh, this guy, Kelly Starlett's got some ideas on this. He's got some fucking band stretches. He's got some rollers. I'll spend fucking 300 quid on all of this self-massage tools just to try and feel better because I'm in a trained state and this is achy, so I'm going to go and try to fix it. People who overthink things try to come up with solutions for problems that don't exist. That tends to be a big roadblock to them as well, in my experience. Because they're, like we said, we're kind of banging on the same thing, but it's true. Like they're not at home with stressing with stress in the body and accepting that that's just the part of the process of getting stronger, they tend to overthink it, or maybe think they're getting injured, or preempt things. The body's a very resilient thing, and it's quite difficult, if not very difficult, to injure yourself within a lifting context. You really need to be doing something pretty silly to get injured in the gym when it comes to lifting weights. You will get injured eventually. If you train properly, you will get injured at some stage when you lift, but it should be a fairly rare occurrence. You will, however, be constantly sore somewhere if you lift properly. That's just the way it is. And then finally, this is a good one to finish up on. This is one thing I try to use as a bit of coaching feedback with the strength workshop way back when it was only like 6 people and it was like a set course. Lifting is a verb. Verbs are doing words. If you want to get better at lifting, you have to go and lift. No amount of reading, no amount of sitting in Excel, no amount of watching videos on YouTube, no amount of listening to podcasts like this is going to make you a better lifter. You need to get your ass in the gym and lift some weights if you want to get better at it. And that's the be all and end all of this sport. It's practice and doing it. That's what's going to make you better. Thinking about it, reading about it, it's not going to fucking matter. Paying someone who's really good at coaching might help though. Plug. Thanks very much for listening to the podcast. Hopefully I'll maybe catch you live on Friday. I haven't really decided on a topic for that yet, so if you have a topic you'd like to hear me cover, you have a question you'd like me to go through, please shoot that email onto speedpowerperformance@gmail.com or leave a comment down on YouTube. Thank you very much for listening. I'll catch you for episode 96 on Friday. Hopefully you enjoy the rest of your day and the rest of your week. Good luck. Bye.